afterwards. So let's go ahead and jump in. So LockDown browser is a custom browser. It's a browser that prevents cheating during online exams by making sure students can't access any other resources on the device. And so when used alone, just by itself, it was really designed for proctored environments such as a classroom, a testing center, or a computer lab where a proctor or instructor is present. It is also a required component of Respondus Monitor, which is our webcam-based proctoring solution. And it integrates with the assessment tool and Canvas, and that does include new and classic quizzes. Are you all using a mixture of both new and classic quizzes for your courses? Or just one or the other?
What's the difference? Classic.
What's the difference? Yeah, when I go through the instructor perspective, I'll just point out the difference and maybe we can just cover both in case. There is just a difference on the student's end depending on which quiz type you're using. So yeah, new is like Canvas's newer quiz type. It has some like more complex question types like hotspot. That's the first one that comes to mind. And classic quizzes is their older version of quizzes. So I'll point out how you can kind of tell which quiz type you're using. Of course, it also LockDown browser also integrates with the different publisher platforms that I mentioned, and we do have a partnership with those platforms. So if you do have any specific questions on LockDown browser, they provide their own version of LockDown browser. So you would need to go directly to those publisher platforms. But we do work with those publisher platforms directly for the use of Respondus Monitor as well. Okay, so first I am going to start with the instructor perspective. We're going to take a look at the LockDown browser dashboard that's in your Canvas course. So we'll walk through how to enable an exam with LockDown browser, the different settings that are available to you for your Canvas exams. And you'll see it's super easy due to the deep integration that we have within Canvas. So let me switch my screen here to my Canvas course where I'm logged in as an instructor. And within your courses menu here, this is where you're going to see the LockDown browser dashboard. This dashboard in Canvas is where you'll require the use of LockDown browser and find some different resources here. I am going to start by sharing the different resources in this dashboard. So I'm actually here on this Getting Started tab. This is a great place for first-time users. There's an introductory video here, some templated instructions that you can provide to students. Again, notice that they are specific to new and classic quizzes, so just make sure you're using the right version. Here in a second, I'll show you how to tell which version you're using. And there are also some tips and best practices here, including using a practice quiz in your course, which we'll talk about later on in this session. Under video tutorials, there are a bunch of short videos here. We'll be covering this information today, but this is a great place if you need a refresher. Under guides and support, there are some instructor quick start guides. Again, those instructions for your students and some additional links for support, including us on the training team. We do have the ability for you to schedule a one-on-one call with a trainer here if you have any specific questions. And we do have free public training webinars as well. And then we also have some links here for troubleshooting and technical support. We have our searchable knowledge base, and it's also where anyone at your institution, including students, can submit a ticket if they need technical support. And then here under the Other Systems tab, you'll see those publisher platforms that we work with Respondus Monitor. Those I mentioned, Pearson MyLab and McGraw-Hill ALEX, but that also includes Cengage WebAssign and Hawks Learning. You'll see some links here where you can learn more. I'll just show you an example here. So there are some resources here for those platforms. So some training resources. So what I'm going to show you in Canvas is different than the setup that's in the different publisher platforms, since it is their integration of LockDown browser. So where they included the settings, how to access the Respondus Monitor dashboard is what it's called in the publisher platforms, is a little different than what you'll see in Canvas. So there are some resources here that will walk you through that. Also, some steps of setting up the integration, how to link it to your institution's existing Respondus Monitor licenses here, and some additional questions as well. So definitely would suggest going to those links here for more information on how to set that up. Okay, so now under this main dashboard tab here, This is where you're going to see all of the quizzes and exams within your individual course. Now remember, LockDown Browser is a browser like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, etc. It is where your students are going to be taking your Canvas exam. So ultimately, the first step is actually creating that Canvas exam in your course, and then it's going to automatically populate here within the LockDown Browser dashboard. So just to show you really quickly which quiz type you're using, if you are using a classic quiz, it's going to be like this outline of a rocket ship. And then if we open this up further too, you'll see this is kind of what that edit page looks like, what the questions look like, etc. If you're using a new quiz, it will be this filled in rocket ship here. And then again, if we open up the exam, this is what it looks like to actually build that exam, the different questions that are available to you, settings, etc. So does it sound like you might use a mixture of both quiz types or one or the other?
We use both.
Both.
I
Okay,
think Julia,
perfect.
also it's when faculty duplicate their course from a prior term,
Mhm.
it's already set at new quizzes as admins. But for faculty, if they don't notice that, they might copy all of their classic quizzes instead. So it just depends. I'm eventually going to, well, we're eventually having to do everything where we disable classic and everything will go into the new.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
But we can
Yes.
talk later about that because
That's
there's
a canvas thing, not a institution.
It's possible to talk to them because the new quizzes allow students to print students. Doesn't matter that you prove a passport or not. Anytime, anywhere, wherever they are, they can print their exams. So if you have a bank of questions that you want to protect, it's done. This is why I moved from the new
I did
quizzes
not
to
know
the
that.
classic quizzes.
Alex, and that's something that we need to tell Canvas,
I
so that they
mentioned
can,
that yesterday.
Okay.
To
like, action.
Mhm.
Go ahead, Julia, thank you.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so I will definitely touch on both. Again, there is just one difference on the student's experience depending on if you're using the new or classic. So I'll point that out today for sure. Okay, so today we're going to work in this week 9 quiz here. We can tell just by this first column that we do not yet have LockDown Browser required or Respondus Monitor required for this exam. So in order to do so, I'm going to open up my settings and I'm just going to require Respondus LockDown Browser. If that's all you need to do, you can just press save and close. But of course, there are some additional optional settings here for the use of LockDown Browser. So notice you can hover over these explain links here next to each of these settings to learn more about them. And a few of them, you'll be able to click into that explain link to open up an article with some more information. I'm going to cover just a few of these settings, including this first one here. This setting, when enabled, meaning when I have it checked, will lock students into LockDown Browser until they have submitted the exam for grading. So again, they won't be able to exit out of LockDown Browser at all until they have submitted the exam. You can provide a passcode here for any proctors or instructors to have handy. So if a student does need to leave early for any reason, maybe due to an emergency or something along those lines, then that password can be typed into the student's device to allow them to exit LockDown Browser and their exam early. Now, even with this setting turned off or unchecked here, you still have some control over students leaving LockDown Browser and their exam early. So at this point, if they were to leave LockDown Browser early, they're first going to be required to provide a reason why, and then you can review that reason here under Review Early Exits. This next setting here is to allow access to specific external web domains within your exam. So this is popularly used for e-textbooks or a full website you want students to be able to access during the exam. So as an example, I do have this set up as an open e-textbook exam. So in the exam itself, I have a direct URL to that e-textbook. And then right here, I've included that e-textbook's web domain in my settings. So that will allow students to click around to the different chapters, pages, and links within that e-textbook or whatever links uses pressbooks.pub as its web domain. And that is different than just including a direct URL in the exam itself and not including its web domain here within the settings. Any URLs you add directly into the exam, you're essentially allow listing, but not including the web domain here means that students won't be able to click around anywhere else. So I have some examples of this that we're gonna look at in the exam here soon that we take as a student, but just remember I have pressbooks.pub enabled here. The next two settings are pretty self-explanatory. It enables a calculator within the LockDown browser toolbar and also enables printing of the exam screen. Okay, so now that we have our settings selected, I will press save and close. And just a note here, these LockDown browser settings you might not see in those publisher platforms. Again, the publishers provide their own version of LockDown browser, so they choose what settings are available to you all. So you might not see those settings in those publisher platforms for LockDown browser. Okay, so let's look at the student perspective with just LockDown browser.
I have a question.
Yes, of course.
Is Respondus LockDown web browser able to detect double sessions?
Is it detect what? I'm so sorry, it was hard to hear you.
Like what? Double
When-
session?
Yeah, when a student, for example, this room, log in, start the exam, but in a different room, in a different part, another student's able to use that first student credentials to get into the same exam.
So
Oh,
let's assume somebody double dips into an exam as the same person.
At the same time.
Yeah, so you're saying, can someone log into Canvas with the same credential, like two people log into Canvas with the same credentials at the same time to take that exam?
Yes.
Yeah, that is more on the student or on the Canvas side, not the LockDown browser side. Yeah, LockDown browser is ultimately just the browser where students are taking the Canvas exam. So it's really dependent on Canvas if they can have multiple logins at the same time. So I definitely direct that question to Canvas. Of course, for Respondus Monitor, if you use Respondus Monitor at all, of course, the student will be recorded. So you'll be able to see that the correct student was taking the exam.
I have one more question. For the instructor's view, you said there's an option to print out. I mean, how is that? I mean, if student can print out questions, I mean, this can be distributed around.
So are you talking about this printing option here?
Yeah, printing option. So
yeah,
then it becomes public knowledge.
So it's totally up to you if you want to enable printing. The only reason it's there is sometimes instructors want students to print out. If they print out the exam screen, it also includes any responses that they have. So there's been examples at other institutions where they want students to print it and like submit it in a way or something along those lines. So if you don't have it enabled, students won't be able to print at all. If you do have it enabled, they'll have the ability in the LockDown browser toolbar to print the exam and their answers. But with it unenabled, they're of course not going to be able to do so.
Right, thank you.
And Julia, can I ask, once a faculty member, I mean, do they have to go through this checkup every single time? Or does it record, like, I already know that I'm allowing the student to, use monitor with this and so forth, but I want to make sure that check at printing is never on. Or do they have to go in every single time and uncheck it?
So that setting will automatically be off, I believe. So it's not something that's automatically on. It should automatically be off in your settings. So you shouldn't ever have to like go in and turn it off. But I will say that, yeah, LockDown browser, requiring LockDown browser and the other settings are exam specific. So yeah, you do need to go in and like edit the settings as needed for each exam. However, I say that with an exception here. If you do copy your course semester to semester, your settings, your Respondus Monitor settings will copy into that new course. But in that new course, you do just need to open that dashboard once after you've copied it, and that's going to sync those settings to that new course. So the settings will copy, but just open that dashboard in that new course. I hope that helps.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so the student perspective with LockDown Browser. So students will need to one-time download LockDown Browser onto their device. Remember that LockDown Browser is an application. It's not an extension or a setting. It's much more powerful than that. So it does need to be installed onto the student's device. And students will need to do this from your institution's unique download link. So they can't just search and Google a generic version of LockDown Browser. They need to install it via your institution's unique link. And you can provide that link to students directly, or they can find it on the very first exam they take within Canvas that requires LockDown Browser. That link is built right into the integration. And LockDown Browser can be downloaded and installed onto these devices, Windows, Mac, Chromebooks, and iPads. Or of course, LockDown Browser can be installed on an institution's managed device. So say you have a computer lab, testing center, or a computer loaner program of some sort. It's just going to need to be the institution who installs LockDown Browser onto those managed devices, as your students typically don't have admin permissions to do so. And remember that this is for Canvas for LockDown Browser. So again, for those publisher platforms, students will have to additionally download and install the publisher platforms version of LockDown Browser. All of the publisher platforms use the same version of LockDown Browser. It's called the OEM version. So that can be used for McGraw-Hill ALEX, for Pearson MyLab, but each publisher platforms also have their own permissions or devices that they work with. So you'll have to work directly with those publisher platforms for their version of LockDown Browser. Any questions about installing LockDown Browser for Canvas or the publisher platforms? Okay, for the publisher platforms as well, they'll find that link to download and install that version right when they go in to take that first exam that requires LockDown Browser. So that experience for students is very similar. Okay, so now that we have LockDown Browser installed onto the device, this is where that difference comes into play, depending on if you're using the new or classic quizzes. So let's talk about that. First, if you are using classic quizzes, then students will need to manually launch LockDown Browser, meaning they will launch LockDown Browser first as their browser. They'll log into Canvas, navigate to that quiz, and then they'll begin. So what that looks like, I have LockDown Browser installed onto my device here, so I'm going to double click on that to launch it. I'll log into Canvas, navigate to that quiz, and then I'll begin. If you're using new quizzes, then LockDown Browser will automatically launch for your students, meaning students will log into Canvas from a standard browser like Chrome, Firefox, Safari, etc. Log into Canvas, navigate to that new quiz, and as soon as they press to start that new quiz, that is when LockDown Browser will automatically launch. Okay, so now that we've talked about that student perspective, let's just pivot now just to save some time. I'm going to actually talk about Respondus Monitor. So give me one moment here. I always like to as well just mention some different ways that LockDown Browser alone can be used. So we'll do that first. So LockDown Browser is often used by itself for in-class exams, where LockDown Browser eliminates the need to monitor each student's device, and even for in-classroom writing assignments in the quizzing tool to prevent the use of generative AI tools like ChatGPT. And of course, it's used in thousands of proctored centers all over the world. But in proctored settings, in non-proctored settings, I should say, with no proctor present, is where Respondus Monitor will step in. So I'm going to switch gears now to talk about our fully automated proctoring solution, which is available on demand. Meaning students don't need to schedule time with a proctor. They can take the exam at any time, so long as the instructor has made it available. And this builds on LockDown Browser first, which is why I showed you LockDown Browser first, as LockDown Browser is a required component of Respondus Monitor to address that digital cheating. But what Respondus Monitor will additionally do is record the student during the exam. Of course, it doesn't just record the student, it also takes that video and analyzes it to provide instructors with a meaningful report so they can efficiently review the data. This includes automated flags of suspicious behavior and prioritized videos. Though, of course, the overall goal of Respondus Monitor is to prevent cheating in the first place. So LockDown Browser and Respondus Monitor together creates a fair testing environment for students, which reduces the pressure to cheat. And students know that they're being recorded, of course, which acts as a powerful deterrent. So let's go back into our instructor settings here and talk through the different Respondus Monitor settings that are available to you. So we already have LockDown Browser required. We do not yet have Respondus Monitor required. So I'm going to, of course, require Respondus Monitor. You can see this pop up that your institution can customize. So you'll want to review that and continue. And then you'll see the Respondus Monitor settings themselves. And I think my screen got stuck here. 1 second. There we go. Okay, so right up top of these Respondus Monitor settings, you'll see you have the option of what is going to be recorded during the exam session. So the webcam only will, of course, record the student and the environment around them. Additionally, Plus Screen will record the student's screen itself, so you could potentially watch them take the Canvas exam, which might be helpful to view and verify any technical issues that they've reported, or to better understand how the student answered a question. And now there is also the option of recording the student's screen only. So this is a perfect example for proctored environments or a testing center, but you still want to be able to see what was happening on the student's screen, or you want to allow the ability for one of our other newer features, application switching to Microsoft Excel and Word. Now this new feature does require screen recording, so it's available for webcam plus screen or the screen only options. And I'll talk through that a little bit more here in a moment. For today, we're going to select webcam plus screen so I can talk through all of these other settings that are available to you. So the startup sequence here is a list of steps that students may be required to finish before they can start the exam. And I say maybe because you can pick and choose from most of these which settings you would like to use. And also notice that a few of them you can edit the instructions on. Now I'm going to show you these steps more in depth when we take the exam as a student here soon. But I do want to point out a few important ones, which are the ones that are required, starting with the webcam check here. This, of course, checks the students have a webcam and that it's working. It also checks other things like their internet, their audio, and some other technical requirements on the back end. And it is also one of the places that students can get technical support should they come across any issues. And I'll point that out when we take the exam as a student. At the bottom here is the face detection check, which is a feature of Respondus Monitor that will make sure that we can see the student's face during the exam. So of course, we need to see the students to ensure that they're alone, not using outside resources, etc. So this just makes sure that we can see the student's face. There are a couple things about the face detection that you can change here. You can prevent or allow students from starting the exam if they fail that face detection check. And you can also notify students during the exam if they can't be seen clearly at any point. So that's helpful if the student has shifted too much or the lighting in the room has changed. Maybe it's gotten too dark. Students will be notified and they'll need to make a correction. And then here within the advanced settings, there are some helpful newer settings that include the ability to require students to take photos of any handwritten work that they've completed during the exam. So this show your work feature can capture up to 20 photos full size after an exam that required Respondus Monitor. And then as mentioned, there is this new setting here that allows application switching to Word and Excel. So this is for the desktop versions of Excel and Word. So the desktop version is needed. And that is why it is also for Windows and Mac devices only. Now, when this setting is enabled and you've selected either Excel or Word, that Excel or Word icon will show in the LockDown browser toolbar for students. So they can use that icon to open up a blank Excel or Word document, or you can embed an Excel or Word document into the exam itself, where maybe you've already added data or a word prompt that you want students to further edit and work with. And then from there, students can submit that file for grading using the file upload or essay question type. So this, I clicked on that explain link here to open up this article. So this has some great further information on how to set this up, some other notes, tips here, etc. Some other settings here in the advanced settings are to allow the use of an iPad, and also to allow the exam to also be delivered within a proctored lab. And I'll talk about that setting a little bit more later on. Any questions about the settings before I move on? Okay. So we'll press save and close, and now you can see that LockDown browser and Respondus monitor for this exam are required, and it lists webcam plus screen since that is what we selected to record. Now, the other part of the instructor experience is to review that post-exam data. So at this point, students have taken the exam and the videos have processed, normally within about 5 to 10 minutes after the student has concluded the exam. So at this point, you are ready to review. So within this same drop-down menu here is where you'll be able to open up your class results. So in your class results here, you'll see your class roster with the associated data for each student's exam video. And you'll notice first, review priority ranking here in this column, which puts students' videos into a simple ranking system, just high, medium, or low. And that's based on a few factors from the exam session. This is just a great indicator for instructors to use to identify which exam sessions might require deeper scrutiny. There are some other useful data points here, including the duration of the exam and the student's grade, which is just good information to have handy when you're looking at all of the details as a whole. And you can also sort by any of these columns if needed or helpful. Now, in many cases, anything more than a cursory scan here isn't necessary. The goal, of course, again, is to deter cheating. Students know that they're being recorded and are therefore less likely to cheat. But if something suspicious does show up, then it's very easy to dig in deeper by opening this student's video using this plus sign here. So here you get the full video and more data about the exam session. So you have the video player here where you can watch the video. You can also jump around here, make it play at a faster speed. And then these red areas here correspond with the timestamped flags of suspicious events, which, for example, might be when the student is missing from the video. You can hover over these explain links here to learn more about that flag. You'll also see that you can review the students' milestones during the exam. So what question they were on and when, how long it took them to answer that question, and what question they were on when they were flagged, which might give you more context into their behavior. And then at the bottom here, you'll see a bunch of random thumbnails taken throughout the exam, which offers a quick way to scan the video. So say in one, you see the student is looking away or using an unapproved resource. You can click on that thumbnail and then watch that portion of the video. And at the top of these thumbnails, you'll see the results of that pre-exam startup sequence. So you can see the student's photo here, student's ID, the environment video, and the pre-exam video. And video is all stored by default for 5 years, so you can access this all later if needed. Another example here, just to show you the screen recording. So this session required screen recording as well. So you can see I can just easily toggle back and forth between that screen recording view and the webcam view. And when I do so, all the flags, milestones, thumbnails, and of course the videos themselves will sync. There you go. Now, another resource I wanted to point out here is right up top. There is this feature here that allows instructors to adjust the sensitivity level for the review priority and flagging system. So for example, you might want to choose relaxed if it is an open note, open book exam. So it will recalculate the results. So the videos and data are still processed the same way, but this just lets you choose what data you're looking at and is a post-exam setting. This setting also includes a feature that is on by default to alert instructors to the presence of any handheld devices seen within the student's video. Now, in situations where an instructor maybe wants to exclude this flag from the proctoring results, such as, for example, maybe you're doing a math exam where you've allowed the use of an external calculator, then you can easily adjust that here after the assessment. Now, I know this is a bunch of information, but also right up top here is this great guide called Understanding Proctoring Results. This will go over the class results again, what you're looking at, some frequently asked questions like what are the different flags and milestones you might see, and there are some important tips here at the bottom as well. Now, again, the intent and goal of Respondus Monitor is not to have instructors watch the videos of each student. With a quick glance across the thumbnails and some of the other data like grades, flags, duration of exam, etc., you can generally pick up if something is amiss pretty quickly. Instructors generally spend about 15 to 20 seconds per student reviewing the data here, but of course you can always dig in deeper if you need to, similar to surveillance cameras. Okay, phew. So now that we've seen how to set up a test to require LockDown browser and Respondus monitor, let's look at the student perspective. So I am going to switch my screen here to talk about the student perspective. Okay, so for Respondus Monitor, students will use the same installation of LockDown browser. So if they have it installed, they're already ready for Respondus Monitor. And the same devices are supported, Windows, Mac, Chromebooks, and iPads. Of course, students will just additionally need a webcam if you're requiring that webcam. So that can be internally built into their device or an external webcam. And of course, Respondus Monitor will do the work to ensure that that webcam is working before students can begin. So I'm going to switch my screen here now to a live course where I'm logged in as a student. We are going to take that week 9 exam where we just enabled LockDown browser and Respondus monitor. This is a new quiz, so you'll see as soon as I click on it, LockDown browser will automatically launch for me. And then at this point, regardless of if you're using newer classic quizzes, oops, actually, I forgot. I need to turn off my camera for Teams so that it will be used for Respondus monitor. Sorry. Okay, let's try again. So at this point, regardless if you're using newer classic quizzes, regardless of how it launches, students at this point will be asked to close any remaining open applications on their device. So as an example, I have an instant messaging application here. So of course I can't use that during the exam. So I do need to close it before I can continue. And then at this point, we will begin the exam. But now, of course, with Respondus Monitor enabled, we're first going to have to complete that pre-exam startup sequence. So first here, students will see the terms of use. So they'll review that and agree. And then they'll have that webcam check. So hi. So the webcam check, of course, checks that students have a webcam and that it's working. It checks their internet, their audio, and some other technical requirements on the back end. They'll record this quick segment here. And if they come across any issues, then there is this built-in "it's not working" link that students can use to identify the issue that they're having. They'll get some troubleshooting suggestions. And if that's still not working, then they can chat with one of our live agents. And our live agents are available 24/7, 365 days a year. They're highly trained and ready to help. And yes, they are real people. They are not bots. So once students have completed any troubleshooting, if they've needed it, they're just going to continue through the steps here on the left-hand side. And remember that steps 3 through 7 are optional. So you can edit and provide some additional instructions for your students. You can share our guidelines and tips, such as making sure that they're in a quiet location, their internet connection is strong, their workspace is clear of all materials, etc. And then at this point, instructors might want to confirm the identity of the student. So there are a few options for that. First, there is this student photo step, which will take a photo of your student. And then you can review that within the class results. In addition to this step or instead of, you can use the show ID step. So right here above my head, you can edit the instructions to let students know what ID is acceptable to use. They'll just hold that up to the camera and take a picture of it. And then again, you can review that within the class results. Now next here is that environment check, which again is optional to use, but it's just an opportunity to have students show you their environment. So they would pick up their device or their external camera and show around them, show they're in the room alone, show their workspace is clear of all materials, etc. Some instructors even have students pull out their phones and turn it off on camera and set it far away. Again, right here above my head, you can edit the instructions to let students know what all they need to show during this step, your expectations, maybe even consequences of not meeting those expectations. And then once students have finished this environment check, notice within the upper right-hand corner here that this recording icon turns on, indicating to your students that from here on out, they are being recorded. And we call this the pre-exam video, which is meant to prevent a gap after this environment check and before the start of the exam where students could potentially pull back out their notes or their phone. If they were to do so at this point, they would be recorded doing it. And then next here is that face detection check, so you can clearly see me within this frame, so I get this green check mark that I can continue on into my exam. So now I will begin the exam. And then notice here within LockDown Browser that there are several removed features. LockDown Browser is in full screen and cannot be minimized, and I can't access anything else on my device, such as my desktop, menu bar, start button, or system tray. Up here up top, I can't type in another URL to navigate to another website or back to my Canvas course at all. And what you can't visually see is that I can't access and use any keyboard commands, my right-click menu, or any task switching keystrokes or swiping gestures. And LockDown Browser is blocking all screen capture, screen sharing, remote desktops, virtual machines, dual monitors. Also keep in mind that LockDown Browser is its own browser, so other browser features can't be used with LockDown Browser or other browser extensions as well, which blocks the use of AI tools. Okay, but just keep in mind, this is still your Canvas exam, so your question types, any time limits that you've set, etc., all work the same here within LockDown Browser. So to point out a few resources here, here is that calculator I enabled. This is the scientific version. The standard version is just what's here on the right. And I can easily just copy and paste from that calculator, which brings up an important point about copy paste. Students' clipboards are cleared when they enter and exit LockDown Browser, but here in the exam itself, they can use copy paste to help them write their essays, copy from the calculator, etc. And then here are those web-based resources I added into the exam. So remember, pressbooks.pub is enabled within my settings. This link I can open up. It's just going to open as a new tab here, so I can toggle back and forth. And since I included pressbooks.pub in my settings, I can click around to the different chapters, pages, and links within this e-textbook, or any links that uses pressbooks.pub as its web domain. If I try to leave, though, pressbooks.pub, say I try to go to LinkedIn here, those links will be blocked as I've only enabled pressbooks.pub. And then again, this is different than just linking a specific article or URL in the exam. So I've included this article here that I want students to review and write about. I didn't include its web domain within the settings, so I can only access this one URL and I won't be able to click around anywhere else. Okay. Any questions while I'm here in LockDown Browser before I move on?
Are you allowed to do two cameras where, so they're using a webcam on their face and a second camera on their hands?
That's a great question. Let me submit, we can talk about that. So currently, no, it is just the one camera option. We do have instructors who require an external camera and then set it up in a side view if that's preferred. So you can see the students like keyboards, see their desktop, etc. But I say currently because dual camera is coming and it is coming soon. So not currently available, but that is a feature that you'll see soon.
Thank you.
Of course.
So what is a dual camera?
A dual camera meaning that students will have the camera that you will see like you're seeing here with me. It will be most likely the camera that's like internally built into their device or an external USB camera that's set up in this screen. And then a second camera that can also be used and recorded to show their desktop, to show their computer, show their hands, etc.
But that's will be soon. That option.
Yes. Yeah, I don't have a specific timeline, but yes, that is a new upcoming feature.
It does mean that a student will need to have two cameras.
Yeah.
Well, their webcam and their phone.
Okay.
Which will connect.
Got it.
Which we're talking about.
Yes, it will be there.
Respondus.
I can't talk too much to the specifics, to be honest, but I can say it will be their phone, which also prevents the use of them being able to use their phone during the session as well. So it's kind of a second benefit there as well.
Thank you.
Of course. Okay, so that was the full student experience with LockDown Browser and Respondus Monitor. I know we're almost at the 45 minutes. Do you all have a few more minutes to talk about a few other things, or should I wrap up?
What do you want to do that? I think so we can wrap up. I think here, then if we have a specific question, we can collect them and send them to you.
Okay, perfect. My only last tidbit here is really important. It's to provide students with a practice quiz, require it, incentivize it. It's a great opportunity for students to first download and install it, make sure they can use that webcam. It's a great opportunity to also set expectations with students as well. I'll send you all like a tip sheet on a practice quiz. Great.
I have two questions. Hold on.
I have a quick question. So it's a new quiz and all the classic quizzes, just, it's old way and new quiz. They don't need even to go to a LockDown browser. They would just go using Google Chrome and get to automatically.
It's from within your Canvas quiz.
Okay.
So wherever they have to go for their next quiz or exam, they click on it and it launches from there.
And so is there hybrid, new plus classic? There's either this or that.
This or that.
Thank you.
And Mr. Emar needed to ask a question.
Yeah, I was surprised that earlier this week I had to take some exams down in the testing center. And they had a thing on the counter, and they now have students coming in there with Google glasses that have a camera in the glasses.
It's a battle glass.
And it's not gonna be much longer. You're gonna have eyeglasses. It's got a nano camera in it, and it's not detectable. So are y'all working on that? And there's also gonna be earbuds or earbuds. They're gonna be so tiny, you literally can't see them.
Don't get the optical implants. It's coming.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an ongoing discussion. I would definitely encourage the use of that environment check before the exam to have students, show their ears, show their eyeglasses if that's of a concern. But yes, it is an ongoing discussion internally about how to combat those things. Absolutely.
But how would you combat that on an online test though?
That's a great question. And I'm not sure if I have an answer for you at this point, but I do know our development team is talking about it. Absolutely.
Oh, and I think you answered this earlier, but in mathematics, some of us use our site called Desmos. So is there a way you can do the test?
Yeah.
It's locked down except for Desmos.
So just like I mentioned, whatever URLs you add into your exam, students will be able to access. So Desmos is often used in an exam that requires LockDown browser. You would just need to provide students with a link to Desmos in the exam, maybe on their first question or in their instructions, so they can use that link to open that Desmos calculator. But yeah, that's commonly used, yes.
Any other questions?
And I guess I do have one other, might as well throw it out there. I'm curious, I don't know if you've done any research or if it's possible, but I mean, as an instructor, if you're going to accuse a student of cheating, you better be almost 100% sure they were cheating. And you have, when the medical profession, what they call the false positive. And, you may end up telling somebody, well, you were cheating because I saw this, when in fact they weren't. So do you have any measurement of the accuracy or how subjective is it when you accuse somebody online of cheating?
Yeah, what I would say to that is that's why it's very, very important to set very clear expectations with your students ahead of the exam of what behaviors you do constitute as cheating, what behaviors you don't want to see during the exam. We even have instructors who use a specific rubric to very clearly state that with students of if you exhibit this behavior, that's cheating, you might get a 0. Maybe if you do this, it's not that egregious. Maybe you lose 10 points, but yeah, that's why it's very important to set very clear expectations with your students. If you see them looking away often, maybe that's something you've let your students know that is suspicious to you and might warrant, next steps. But yeah, LockDown browser and Respondus monitor specifically just provides you with all of that data, the different data points to help you determine if there were that academic integrity issue. But yeah, I hope that kind of helps.
Julia, can I ask one more thing? You mentioned how a student looks away and it's catching where they can't keep it. Does monitor shut down after a certain amount, or does it continue to allow the student?
It just flags, like that.
Is there a way to say no more than 5 flags and then the monitor will shut down, or the exam will shut down?
No, yeah, it is an
Okay.
automated proctoring solution. So it provides that data afterwards for instructors to review to ensure there weren't academic integrity issues during that exam. So again, that's part of that, setting very clear expectations with your students. That's also why a practice quiz is really important. So you can view your exams, view your students taking that exam, review those class results. And if there is suspicious behavior, then you can talk to them about if they exhibit that on that first high stakes exam. Yeah, the main goal is to ensure students can continue and complete the exam. There's very few reasons why they would be kicked out of the session. It's really like if it's an internet connection issue, or if they broke the terms of use in some way by trying to use something on the device that they shouldn't. Like trying to use an exploit of some sort. Yeah.
And everybody knows how to access the practice quiz here? Can you show us if, let's say, real quick, access the practice quiz and then embed it in the first module? Can they do that? Or does it have to go into LockDown browser and then have them go in that route?
So whatever quiz is in the course, they'll have to go into that LockDown browser dashboard and enable
I'm
LockDown
talking
browser
about
for it.
Sorry, I'm talking about the practice quiz.
You're creating your own quiz.
Yeah,
You create your,
yeah.
oh,
Yeah,
I
you
see.
create your own
Okay.
practice quiz. So we often see that practice quiz as your syllabus quiz or like an attestation or honor code quiz, whatever you would like to set it up, even just a quick multi-question quiz. But yeah, you do create your own practice quiz.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I appreciate you clarifying. I think we're done. I appreciate your
Okay.
time. Thank you for recording all this and
Yeah.
sending it
Of course,
to
yeah.
Dr. Sanchez and myself. That
Okay.
way we can share it up, put it in our faculty Canvas hub as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And there is our training email. So if you think of any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. And don't forget that you can schedule that one-on-one time with a trainer from that dashboard as well. Awesome. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a nice day.
You too. Bye, y'all.
Bye-bye. Thank you.